Welcome to the podcast. It's been quite an interesting year. It's been a crazy year. Reflecting on it, it's like it's crazy that it's almost 2025, and yeah, the there's been there's been quite a lot that has happened this year. Interesting stuff. Some of the stuff that I'm gonna speak about today. We really have about a month to go. Well, if you're listening to this in October, considering that most of the things probably get kind of slowed down during the month of December, right? Is the festive, everybody's in a holiday mood. Yeah, but for me, just reflecting back, I think it has been quite an interesting year, and I think the premises of this podcast episode today is based on these learnings, right? I recently saw a LinkedIn post, and this guy had learnings for UX designers. His name is Matt. Can't pronounce his surname. The guy's from Poland. I hope that someday I can speak with him, learn how to pronounce his surname. But you can get you can connect with him. His profile is within the blog post in the description. So if you want to dive into that, check that out. But that's kind of like what sparked this train of thought. What I'm going to speak about today and what I've already put within that blog post, right? Looking into that, yeah, it has been a crazy year. It has been a tough year. But yeah, I'm hoping that 2025 will be a better year, and we can kickstart. We can get it going in a better rhythm as we go, right? So I really have some exciting news to share with you later on the podcast, in the conversation, and yeah. Other than the big news, I think I I've been really been getting into deeper context. I think I've slowed down on the content a little bit, and just have been digging a little bit deeper into the context of the craft of product design, the projects that I've been working on for, as client work, and internally, things that we're launching, as Do Better UX, and I'll be speaking next week. So more on that later. Anyway, well, I actually won't be speaking. I'm gonna be facilitating a workshop, right? I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But if you're new here, this is Dive Into Product. It's a podcast where I share thoughts and ideas. I try to do it seriously for the first year, when I launched it. And yeah, I just couldn't be consistent with it. So now I do it now and again. It's mainly me. It's a solo podcast. And sometimes I get some guests within my network who are crazy enough to want to have a conversation with me, other than just me rambling about and splurging thoughts that are in my head about processes, career insights, and sometimes just tech. I'm a big Apple fanboy, so whenever they've got an event and something new, I try and relate that somehow to product design, just to you know give myself something to speak about. And yeah, my name is Varma Henry. If you haven't figured that out, I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you probably found out out about the podcast, whether on LinkedIn or something like that, and you would have seen my name somewhere somehow. Okay, enough rambling now. Let me get into what we actually want to speak about, right? So recently I came across this LinkedIn post, and this LinkedIn post by Matt, as I mentioned earlier, he was speaking about some of the 10 lessons. I think it was called something like that, like the 10 lessons for UX designers or product designers, something like that. And I took that because it resonated with me in a way, because it was just kind of like an echo of things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, over the past decade, really. The story and the narrative is so much the same that I almost know how, a certain project and things are going to play out before they actually do, right? So and I think the things that he drew there, kind of like resonated with me in that way, to say, these are kind of like the things that I would tell my junior self 10 years ago, right? But what daunted me is that, as much as I would say that I would tell myself, my junior self, this is that these are the things that I kind of like still struggle with today, depending on the capacity and the role that I am playing within the project right now, depending on which battles and things that you decide and end up actually doing and fighting for within any product design project or product management project, or whatever it is that you play within the product space. I play different sets depending on which client work I'm doing, and which project we are working on internally at Do Better UX, right? So I actually thought that this is something that even seasoned product managers, product designers can also resonate with, right? And I'm not gonna go into all the 10 plus points here, right? I'm just gonna cover the ones that I think are kind of like really noteworthy. I think all of them are perfect. I think you should definitely go to the post and read more about it, right? But I think these ones that I'm gonna cover here are really, the highlights of the thing, right? So let me see how many. I messed up the numbering, so I'm not gonna count that. I think I've got about 5 of them out of the 10 plus, right? All right, so I'm just gonna cover about the top 5 or so that I have currently, right? So the first one is really the context around that, and and I had this notion around, and I actually push away some clients over probably the past 6 years away based on this, right? Like, clients come to me looking for an app, a website, whatever it is, right? And the question is, why do you actually need this, right? And I think both the clients and us as consultants also fall in this trap to think that everything requires a Swiss Army knife, right? I think people want to not apply only that one solution, but also want to just have fancy bells and whistles type of things, right? And I come through this scenario a lot, right? People want to add something, a new feature, enhance the feature, etc., but what is it that we actually trying to achieve, right? And usually, if you really dig down and look into what the user case and what the user is actually trying to achieve, that's where you would realize and figure out what is the mode of least resistance, right? And in the blog post, I referenced a South African context where I think this might be relevant to other parts of Africa as well, but it's more real with me because I'm within this context, right? Like, instead of just building an app, use stuff that's already there, right? It doesn't have to be super fancy, right? Some people within South Africa, because of data restrictions and how expensive data plans are, they only buy WhatsApp data bundles because most of their life evolves around WhatsApp, right? And that's all they kind of like have connection to the world. That's the only thing that they mainly have the connection to the world. So if you ask them to download an extra app, your app loads photos and images and things like that, right? It's a problem, and that's why Facebook has got things like Facebook Lite, because they're trying to address, kind of like the not only the issue with the expensive data plans, but also just lower end devices, right? I recently put out a post on LinkedIn, and it it was self-reflection, really. I think people thought I was just, being sarcastic or messing around with people. I said iPhone users designing and building products for Android users, right? And this is me that I was talking about. And that's real empathy right there, right? So as product designers, UX designers, whatever it is, we always talk about empathy and things like that. But, it's really things like that say, you don't understand the user really well. And we try and apply all of these fancy things that are good to look at, are good to use on a high-end working device, with connected to the Wi-Fi with an unlimited data plan that you don't even need to think about, right? And people don't consider this, and not everybody needs a Swiss Army knife, right? So that is the first one. Let me move on to the next one, because I want to talk about other things on the podcast. I want to try and cap this podcast. I don't know what is really a good length, especially with this educational type thoughts, inspiration. I don't think I fit into the inspiration type, thoughts, insights type of podcast, right? So I want to try and keep it to about 30 minutes and so let me move on to the next one. Want to take a break along the way, but let me keep moving. So the next thing is something that I would say is probably something that you experiencing now if you're more seasoned product designer, product manager, or if you're even starting to just really understand the dynamics of the corporate world and how companies work as a whole, right? And this is that most of your work is actually around dealing with the political dynamics within the company that you are in. Now, a lot of people will say, no, I'm just here to do my work. I'm not going to be part of the politics. Now, the politics is there. You're not looking for it. It's just going to be there. It's going to come for you, right? And most of your work is really going to be managing and navigating around this political environment within your space, right? Now, it's about 50% of the technical know-how of actually building the product, doing the work, right? Working on the tangible stuff, rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. And the other 50% is really about how do you then make that product come to life within the organizational um, diplomacy environment that you need to work around. And understanding this reality is one of the most sobering things that I have had in my life, and I've been reminded this year, because I've been trying to step away from being within that space and delegating that role to much more senior roles than myself, and actually play in a role that kind of like doesn't need to be driving certain decisions and things like that, right? But I've always over and over found myself caught up within the politics of the company in whatever project that I'm working on, right? And that has been just a reality and a fact of life around me. So understand this, understand the motivations of stakeholders, understand knowing when to push back, how to push back, and most importantly, how to frame, most importantly, how to frame the design conversations, the product conversations, away from the day-to-day language that you use, like sprints, like design sprints, like roadmaps, etc., right? To speak a little bit more business, right? What your stakeholders understand, while actually addressing their pressure points, the things that they are raising, right? And understanding those dynamics. So yeah, that's kind of like company politics for you, and just learning how to manage stakeholder management, etc., right? And I think that's a very important skill set that we should all be looking at. The next one is an important one, and this one is when you understand those dynamics and understand when to push back, how to push back, etc., right? Because I think a lot of times, because stakeholders have got so much power and direction, we usually feel like we are just obligated to go with whatever it is that they suggest, right? And the reason why they hired you in the first place is because you are the expert in this field, and they are trusting you to give them the right answer, right? Most of the time, they really have very strong suggestions, right? But it is really about understanding the characters, what their pressure points are, and being able to address what they want to achieve, while you actually challenge and mold and kind of steer them with your expertise to the right direction, right? While still achieving the business goals that they're trying to get to, and while you are applying the design expertise or product expertise that you feel that you should be actually applying to this thing, right? Which is a very challenging thing to do, which is a very challenging dynamic to do. But know your stakeholders, know what they're looking for, know how to kind of like press, more like relieve the pressure points that they have, more rather than press, right? And that comes to two things, right? It's about speaking the language. Speak the language that business speaks, and speak the language that developers speak, right? This is really important because I think usually, especially product designers, really looking at the user interface and the user experience, we don't look at the product full circle, right? We don't look at the full cycle of the product. We don't look at the what is happen what is how we're going to launch this product, right? I always say that for product success, you don't only need a really good product. We can do our user research. I've got a lot of debates around, kind of what is the best methods of user researches that you can use in today's age. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later on, and I'll be talking about that next week within the workshop that I'll be running, right? And but let me get back to the point, right? The thing is that we don't look at it full circle. We don't look at it full circle in a sense that how is the product going to be launched? Who is going to be supporting it? What does that look like? What does the support channels look like, right? How is it going to be marketed to the customer? I think as UX designers and UI designers, especially if you don't come from a graphic design background, a lot of those things are usually overlooked because we don't think about what the marketing campaign is going to look like and what that artwork might look like. How are we going to present this app or product or service to the customer, right? And I think it's super important to be able to always be able to think about that and go full circle and be able to speak the language of your stakeholders. Now remember, the stakeholders is not only from a business side, it's also from the developer side. If more, the developers should be your partners within the process, right? As much as you would want to work with stakeholders within marketing and general executive business to understand what are the business needs, how is marketing actually going to take this product out and support your product to shine, right, and put it under the camera and spotlights, right? And how is this thing going to be supported, right? Most of the products out there, they're great because there's a great support team right behind it. If you think about Uber, if you log a call, if you log something is wrong with your order or your food, they do take you through kind of like an automated ticketing system. But at the end of the day, there is a person actioning something. There is a process that is kind of like looking after servicing you, right, as a customer who's using that product. Think about the full circle. Think about how all of this will work like and look like and be able to speak the language. Now I get a little bit more into detail in the post itself, right? This I think I've covered about 3 or 4 or 5 of the points there, but I really want to move on right now to the next part of the things that I want to announce on the podcast today. So I think if you follow me on LinkedIn, many of you know that I have been working on a product called Kaya.money. Now, this is a South African product for my international listeners. I'm looking at you in the stats. So for my South African listeners, even for my international listeners, if you're interested in this thing, we are launching a fintech startup called Kaya.money. Well, we have launched it. The product is not quite in the market as yet, but we're pretty much there. We're very close, which is why we're starting to put the word out there and basically starting to drive our pre-launch campaign at the moment, right? So we're building this. I think I mentioned it in the previous episode as well. So what is Kaya Money? Kaya Money is basically an easier way for people within South Africa for now. Obviously, I think this is scalable within other African countries. But for people within South Africa to be able to send any form of e-wallet or cash send across the South African banking system. So this might be you if you are South African, and you bank with one and not multiple banks, right? So you're trying to send money to somebody via FNB e-wallet or whatever it is that Standard Bank uses or Capitec uses, right? The all of the banks have got the different cash send systems, right? You can just pick whichever one that you want to use and is most convenient to the person who is receiving the money. Now, we have researched this problem for probably 5 years now, 4 to 5 years, and we have been working over the past 3 months to really formulate and bring the product to life. We are going to be releasing our alpha product within the month of November 2024, and would like you to sign up to check it out. We have a limited wait list. If you would like to try it out when we launch, please go to kaya.money. That's the website, and sign up for the waitlist, and we'll let you know when we launch. So I'm super excited about that one, and there is a spin-off of what is actually coming out of that process now. Over the past 3 months, most of the work has happened. We've tried to do most of the work within a 12-week cycle, right? And most of that work really went into creating a framework and something that is going to work for the Kaya Money team to be able to scale into the future, right? And Kaya Money is a product that we are building under the Do Better UX business stack, right? And we thought that it would be very useful for us to actually create frameworks that we try out ourselves and actually build real products ourselves, launch products ourselves with, and then share that with you, which is what I'll be speaking about next week. I keep on saying speaking, which is what I'll be facilitating a workshop on next week. And that is an 8-week framework from coming from idea to product in the App Store within 8 weeks, right? And how do we do this? I think we are living in a world of abundance when it comes to tools that we can use as product designers, and it depends on the complexity of your product, of course, right? I think this will fit a certain category of products, and this program is really targeted to founders who are in the early stages of fundraising, and they have enough money to be able to invest in kind of like the initial building of the idea, but they have a very short and limited runway, right? Which is our case. Well, we haven't raised any money. We are actually just burning through our own money and trying to build this thing, which is the need of, where comes in the need of using modern technology, AI, and other non-code tools to be able to accelerate not only the development process but also the idea validation process. Now, I'll dig in a little bit more into that framework in the next coming weeks after I do the talk at UX South Africa conference. It's an annual conference. I think I spoke there in 2019 and 2020, if I'm not mistaken. I think I did it twice. yeah, I think 2019 and 2020, because the other one was virtual. So those are the two big announcements that I wanted to make before we close off the podcast today. And thank you so much for listening. Now, if you enjoy this type of content, please check out uh, dobetterux.com. Link somewhere in the description, wherever you're listening to this or watching this. And there you will find our newsletter, which is called Dive In Into Product, similar to this podcast. We recently rebranded. I'm trying to get the Dive Into Product as kind of, the main brand when it comes to all the content that we're doing around just, product design, getting into product knowledge. We want to try and bring a lot more people into the next coming year on the podcast. Rebranding is happening there, so check out the newsletter, sign up to it. It's a bi-weekly newsletter. I usually send out just the highlights of what has happened over the past 2 weeks in industry news, as well as just general news that is happening within my space, announcements that I'm making, and some free resources that I'll be giving out, that will be coming out of this 8-week program that will be rolling out. So check out dobetterux.com if you are interested in exploring a little bit more about this, and if you would like to continue the conversation. My name is Farama Henry, and I am on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter, same name. Again, links in the description wherever you're watching this or listening to this on. And until next one, I'll catch you there.